A young Ellen, longing for love, prays to any spirit to grant her companionship. Her plea is answered by a terrifying beastly vision that causes her to collapse in a violent seizure. Years later, in 1838, Ellen lived in Wisberg, Germany, with her husband, Thomas Hutter, an estate agent. Ellen is disturbed by the nightmares and Thomas is trying hard to earn more money for their better lifestyle. Thomas tells her he'll sign the best deal today and leave for the office. Reaching the office, Thomas greets his boss Herr Knock, who argues with him for coming late. Knock offers him a lucrative deal telling him to travel toward Transylvania. Knocks want to sell a crumbling castle in Wisborg to the enigmatic Count Orlok. Thomas thinks about Ellen and refuses to go as he doesn't want to leave her alone. Knock offers him a large amount of money and a permanent career in the company. Listening to this, Thomas agrees as they also need cash for Ellen's treatment. After reaching home, Thomas tells Ellen about the job. Ellen becomes upset and angrily asks him to refuse the deal. Ellen tells him that she dreamt her bridegroom was death before the day of their wedding. Thomas doesn't take it seriously and tells her it's a great opportunity and he'll return after 6 weeks. That night, they go to attend a party at Thomas's friend Friedrich's house. Friedrich is married to Anna and they have 2 daughters. Thomas asks Friedrich to take care of Ellen and Friedrich tells him not to worry about this. Ellen cuts her hair to put in a locket while on the other side, we see Knock worshipping Orlok. In reality, Knock is himself a slave of this devil, but no one knows about it. The next day, Ellen gives Thomas her locket and tells him to write a letter every day, after which Thomas leaves. After a long journey, Thomas reaches a tribe of gypsies in Transylvania. They start laughing strangely at him, which makes Thomas nervous. Thomas tells a man that he wants to go to Orlok's castle, but he needs a room to spend the night. They prevent him from talking about Orlok and shun him for his association with Orlok. Another woman says to Thomas not to go there because he's a devil. Thomas looks at her with a nervous face while remaining silent. That same night, in a dream, Thomas sees tribesmen taking a young girl to the graveyard for sacrifice. He witnesses them brutally impaling a corpse they claim is a vampire. The corpse convulses and vomits as the iron stake pierces its chest, horrifying Thomas. Thomas wakes up in the morning to find that his shoes are dirty and he doesn't see anyone in the village. In fact, he did not have a dream that night, it was all reality, and now Thomas leaves for the palace out of fear. Later that night, he reaches a crossroads and is approached by a carriage pulled by 4 black horses, with no coachman visible. The carriage continues towards Castle Orlok, with 3 huge black wolves chasing after it. Thomas exists and enters the castle. He sees the shadowy figure of Count Orlok standing beyond an archway. Orlok leads Thomas up a stairway and orders Thomas to lay out the deed and sit. Thomas is disturbed by Orlok's sinister demeanor, deep, guttural voice, and raspy breathing. The Count eagerly reviews the paperwork and Thomas asks him about gypsies. Listening to this, Orlok grows angry and orders him not to speak of it again. The next morning, Thomas wakes face down on the floor in front of the fireplace. He looks around, but Orlok is nowhere to be seen. Thomas takes a mirror and finds 2 strange marks on his chest. In Wisberg, Ellen and Anna walk by the sea and she asks Anna if she ever feels as though the sky or the sea are calling to her, calling it destiny. Anna thinks she is speaking of God and calls her a sweet romantic. Night falls at Castle Orlok and Thomas meets with the Count again. Orlok signs the contract and presents it to Thomas to do the same. Orlok notices the locket and asks if it is a token from his bride, which Thomas confirms. Orlok sniffs it and tells Thomas that he is fortunate in his love. After the agreement is done, Thomas states that he wishes to depart but Orlok tells him to stay and rest himself. Orlok leaves and Thomas weakly states that he still has his locket. The next day, Thomas tries to find a way out of the castle but finds several doors locked. He makes his way down and finds a coffin. He pulls the lid off, finding Orlok sleeping naked in the soil. Thomas tries to kill him but Orlok wakes and grabs it, causing Thomas to flee in terror. Later that night, Orlok sniffs Ellen's hair and telepathically communicates to her that her husband is lost to her and she must only dream of him. In Wisberg, Ellen rises from her bed and sleepwalks. Friedrich summons his friend, Dr. Wilhelm Sievers, who examines Ellen and advises that somnambulism is often caused by congestion of the blood. The wolves rush into Thomas's room, causing him to jump into the river. Ellen is with the Hardings by the sea and asks if there has been any word of Thomas. Friedrich replies that there has been none and goes to Anna. Suddenly, they hear Ellen screaming and find her convulsing at the water's edge. At the hospital, Sievers asks the patient, Knock, who he is. Knock only tells them that his Lord Count coming and eats the pigeon alive. Ellen is having another fit and Sievers tightens her corset as Friedrich holds her down, all while Anna watches in distress. Sievers informs Friedrich that Knock has been committed to his hospital, and talking about the devil. He suggests that they contact a specialist, Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz, a physician and scholar. Thomas is saved by a nun and taken to the church where they treat him with holy water and pray. Thomas suddenly wakes and calls out Orlok's name, and upon hearing it, the elderly schema tells him that Orlok must return to the cursed earth. Harding and Sievers make their way to find Professor von Franz. They tell him that a young female house guest of his is experiencing a strange affliction. The ship's crew becomes sick and tells the captain that they have seen rats and the devil. As a crewman begins to vomit up blood, the captain orders that the sick be quarantined. Von Franz arrives at the Harding residence to see Ellen. He sits by her bed and asks her about her spells. She tells him that she cannot always remember them and they are often like dreams. She states that her father would find her naked in the forests and accuse her of her sins. Ellen says she becomes alone and one night calls eternity to help her. After that, her dreams grow darker, and asks if evil comes from within someone or from beyond. Later that night, Ellen is placed in a trance and von Franz examines her vital signs. Von Franz states that she has a second sight and is no longer present before fetching a needle from his bag and driving it through her forearm. He urges Ellen to speak and she replies that he is coming, and utters threats in a hellish voice. After this, he states that Ellen is cursed, perhaps by a demon, which shocks Harding and Sievers. Von tells Sievers that he must examine the possessed Nock, but Harding doesn't believe him. On board the Empusa, Yesu approaches a large crate and finds it filled with rats. Orlok sneaks up behind him and bites a large chunk out of his neck. In the hospital, Nock declares that his lordship has come and bites a chunk out of the porter's neck, shouting that the blood is the life as it sprays into his face. Thomas is brought inside and tells Ellen that she was right. He feared he would never see her again and that Orlok has her locket. The Empusa has crashed and now lies in ruins, with hundreds of rats spreading out of it. A dockhand warns that it is a plague ship. Nock asks Orlok to instruct him and offers to bring Ellen to him, but Orlok states that she must willingly repledge her vow and cannot be stolen. Orlok says that daybreak draws near, that the city shall despair it is coming and he shall taste of Ellen, sniffing her hair in the locket. Orlok's arrival brings a devastating plague to Wisberg, causing mass death and despair. Orlok manipulates Ellen in a dream, falsely claiming that Thomas signed divorce papers and threatening to destroy Wisberg unless she agrees to reaffirm her pact from years ago. Within 2 nights, she must grant verbal approval or risk the town's destruction. The next evening, Orlok brutally murders Friedrich's wife and children, driving Friedrich to despair and death. Ellen, von Franz, and Sievers uncover the key to defeating Orlok. Ellen must willingly sacrifice herself to the vampire, keeping him occupied until sunrise. Von Franz distracts Thomas and Sievers by leading them to Orlok's manor, where they destroy Nock, mistaking him for Orlok. Realizing the truth too late, Thomas races back to Ellen. In a final act of courage, Ellen allows Orlok to feed on her, sacrificing herself to delay him until dawn. As the first rays of sunlight pierce the horizon, Orlok is destroyed, his body collapsing into ash. Ellen succumbs to her wounds, but her sacrifice saves Wisberg from further devastation. Thomas is left to mourn his beloved, her bravery and selflessness ensuring the town's survival. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos.